Planetside Arena was announced last week, and for the first time in several years, I actually became optimistic about anything to do with the Planetside universe. I went into the live stream pretty much convinced that whatever they showed, I could easily just laugh at it and make fun of it for being a dumb idea. At first, that's what I did. When I figured out that they were basically giving me the game I've been asking for nearly 4 years, I changed my mind. Now, I need to say right off the bat that I don't give a single fuck about Battle Royale games. I don't give a single fuck about any Battle Royale mode that's in any other games that I play. This won't change here. I don't care. I don't like the genre, and I don't play it because I find it boring and tedious. In that respect, I'm at least partially on the same page with a lot of the people who are reeing about the mode being included in the base game. At the same time, its inclusion is not going to make me disregard the entire rest of the game on launch or any future plans for the game down the road. Look, I'm just as tired of the BR trend as the next person, but you have to accept that this is what the casual market of games looks like right now, whether we like it or not. If you're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater here, I would venture the opinion that you're just being mad for the sake of being mad. Stop doing that. Before I go on talking about the upcoming game, I think we still need to talk about Planetside 2 some. One of the biggest questions I had coming out of the stream was, what exactly happens to the other game now? I mean, in general, I knew that we'd get the producer letters and the team reassurances that we're not going anywhere, and that's to be expected. What were they supposed to say in this situation? The dynamic here is interesting. I've been getting told for years now by a delusional player base on Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, and forums that Planetside 2 is so great and untouchable because of what it offers compared to other games. So, what happens when a group of developers in the same house says, we're going to give you pretty much the same experience, except we're going to go a more traditional route and try to avoid all the pitfalls and failures of our sister game? A lot of people are having a very hard time accepting their favorite game's failings and poor design. I knew this was the case already, but reading the replies to the mega thread and reading the replies to Visigoto's post shed an even greater light on a player base's mindset that is still stuck in the garbage can. My favorite reply to this has been, if you don't think Planetside 2 is fun, why are you here? And the answer to this question is quite simply that I'm not. I'm basically not playing the game. I'm not having fun with it anymore. I'm not playing the game just like hundreds, if not thousands, of previous players aren't. The reason myself and many others are not playing the game is because of a litany of core design failures that are flat out ignored at every turn and in basically every major patch the game has had for the last 4 years. I have to ask, why for every major patch we get do we see a massive influx of population quickly followed by a steep drop-off? If my experience is like that of a lot of other people, we come to see and test the new stuff. Ultimately, realize and figure out that the reasons we stopped playing in the first place are never and were never actually addressed in any meaningful way, and then we stop playing again and wait for the next big patch to see if they figured it out yet. This has been an ongoing cycle for years now, and the result is still the same. A niche game that fails to ever address core gameplay problems that make people stop playing it. The spectacle of "my big fights" eventually wears off. After it and the fleeting enjoyment you get out of it wears off, you're left with a shallow, poorly balanced, terribly designed mess of a game in the hands of clueless, unqualified developers who either lack the talent to make the changes necessary or who are simply gutless when it comes to making the hard decisions necessary for the betterment of the game. The proof is in the pudding. The pudding is your live server experience. Construction, ASP, meltdown alerts, aerial anomalies, NSX weapons, implants, combined arms initiative. Guys, these are the things right here. They're basically the last 3 to 4 years of what development has been focused on. Honestly, is there anything here that has made the game drastically better, or that has addressed any of why the game ends up being not fun to play? For some of you, I guess it might have. But I think if you're actually honest about the situation, this is kind of an empty list. Construction was a disaster from the start, and is still the most laughably stupid design decision on direction for the game that anyone could ever make with a straight face. ASP was a half-assed band-aid for content mongoloids to feel cool because they could equip a light machine gun on an engineer class. Wow. Meltdown alerts. At the end of a terrible gameplay session of a Continental alert, my screen turns a different color and hurts me some. Cool, dude. NSX weapons. Here's a new line of $7 guns we can shoehorn into the game in different roles because we arbitrarily nerfed drop-off damage values and other stupid shit they've done to the gunplay in the game. Awesome. Implants? Do I even have to go into this? Combined Arms Initiative? You mean the patch that needlessly changed a bunch of resistance values around to attempt to cater to the lowest common denominator by developers that have no fucking functional clue of what makes their game fun to play? The developmental direction of this game for the last 3 or 4 years has been a fucking barren wasteland of idiotic ideas propagated by idiots. And this is just the slop shit that they're tacking onto an already laughably terribly designed game. The mission system? Fire teams? Coltier? Seriously? Fourth faction Black Ops? Imagine having a player base so utterly retarded that you can convince them to pay money to log into an underpop faction. A new continent? Wow, it's not like we have other continents out there that are already terribly designed or unfinished. Let's add some more unfinished shit to the game. It's an impressively embarrassing list of achievements. You've essentially wasted the last 4 years of development on pet projects thought up by terrible players or developers that either don't play the game or don't play the game well enough to understand it. Imagine a sports franchise that whiffs for 4 years on draft selections. What usually ends up happening to these teams? Oh yeah, they usually go down the shitter, much like this game. There always seems to be some hilarious misunderstanding most Planetside 2 players have about their game. They constantly tell you about the scale of the game and no restrictions on anything being such a draw. They always forget or blank on the fact that these also push people away. You guys do understand why the game is a niche game that struggles to keep players, right? Is it maybe because the gameplay you constantly gloat about is terrible? The core of the game is the freedom to make everyone else trying to play it miserable. Wow, how is that not successful? There's also a very common thing being brought up here with the two games that people are somehow clinging to the notion that people are going to jump into Planetside Arena and then also try out Planetside 2. Let's take a look at that notion. One game has 3-faction asymmetrical balance, to include weapons, a developer-endorsed method of playing the game that functionally boils down to zerg the shit out of everything and make the game as miserable to play as possible for everyone trying to play it. Terribly designed bases on laughably bad continents, asymmetric infantry health values all over the place, and to top it all off, it's being developed for by the same people that have been clueless as to what to do with it for years. Is it a sandbox FPS game with large-scale combat? Sure, if you like digging around in a sandbox and finding old, gray dog shit. It's awesome. The new game? One side versus another side. Common pool weapons. 3 classes with normalized HP values. A win condition. 250 versus 250 scale in the mass clash mode or whatever it's called. No, there isn't another game that can offer that at this point. That's been a thing people have been saying for years. No other game can offer the large combat scale that Planetside 2 does. And they were more or less right about that. Except they always seem to conveniently leave out the part where there's no balance to it whatsoever. Guess what? Now there's an alternative. So yes, Planetside 2 is going to lose more players to this game. I can't tell you how many. What I can tell you is that if you play a more traditional version of the shitty model Planetside 2 has, what incentive do you have to play the other game? You're not all of a sudden going to get a huge influx of players into Planetside 2 from Planetside Arena. You might get some, sure, but all new players to the series are going to have to do is play both games for a short time to get an understanding of why this second game is being made in the first place. Are there going to be benefits of this new game existing for Planetside 2? Sure. You're already seeing them. DirectX 11 being implemented to the old game is most assuredly only a byproduct of the new game's development, not because they actually wanted to address the game running like shit forever. Is it going to divide your player base? Absolutely, and it's already showing that it will. It's going to divide the player base between people who want to play an FPS game and people who want to avoid playing an FPS game. Another thing on the dividing the player base thing, it's already divided. Half your actual player base doesn't play the game because it's awful. They sit around playing other stuff, waiting, watching to see if Rel and friends will ever remove their heads from their asses. That day never comes, and now we've got an alternative. If you want to complain or bitch about the new game having a box price, let me remind you that the free-to-play model and the way that it's been used in Planetside 2 has been a disaster. You poison the well of a game so deeply with a poorly thought-out free-to-play model. While Planetside 2 did a better job than some other games, you still leave yourself open to shit like what they did with the implant system. You introduced a monetized system to the game that gave you the opportunity to mitigate poor FPS gameplay mechanics. You want less screen shake and flinch in a game full of it? Gamble, or just flat out pay money to mitigate it. I could go on and on about the rest of the original implants, or even some of the newer, more retarded implants we've had added to the game, but do I really have to? There's a cost to being a free-to-play game, and there always will be. You're at the mercy of terrible management concerning gameplay in order to somehow make the game more profitable. I hate this. Also, if you're still complaining about a box price for the new game and you've spent more than $40 on Planetside 2, just shut the fuck up already. We're getting the opportunity to play an actual FPS game set in a universe that a lot of us already love. A lot of us have been looking for that hope for a long time now, and there are countless players out there who've already given up on Planetside 2 being able to give us that hope. With all that said, I'm still being cautious here. Planetside games have been mismanaged at just about every turn, and the game still belongs to Daybreak Games, which at this point is turning out to be notorious for fucking up their games, despite their best intentions.